Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you come back for the next episode covering the points of this conversation.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding @PrestigiouSPod.
Follow me, Mr. Kent, at Mr. Chris R. Kent.
Follow me, Chris Bean, at Chris Bean Official.
Join our Discord for exclusive content and personal interactions.
And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Bean, on one of my social media platforms, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousInitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website. This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Kent, and I'm joining Chris Bean. Hello, Mr. Bean.
Hello, sir.
Today, let's ask another question, and let's kind of dive into some answers to that question. So the question for today, how can you cultivate a growth mindset and embrace lifelong learning? I think that knowledge is very important in unlocking your full potential. And, in many conversations we've had and conversations that you and I have together, we've talked about the many different ways that you can seek out knowledge, find knowledge, continue to learn, continue to grow. And I think that's probably a pivotal part to making every day better and making every day count is seeking knowledge and continuing to cultivate that growth mindset. So, Mr. Bean, what are your top 3 ways that you engage in continual learning?
Okay. Yeah. So I think that firstly, there's two portions to that original question, which is embrace a growth mindset. And the second point is to be a continual learner. So for myself, you want 3 points of how to be a continual learner. Well, number one, let's pick maybe 3 areas of interest that you want to continue to learn in. Let's say you have an interest of learning more about your job, whatever it is, to be better at X job so that you can be the best version of that job that you are. You want to pick some sort of interest outside of your job that you want to excel in. Maybe it's like right now I'm reading a book on psychology. So we'll say psychology for that. That's communication with people, understanding people a little bit better. And then you pick some other interest. Maybe it's a hobby that you want to dive into. And with those 3 areas, you pick some way to learn in those areas. So for your work, let's say that you're a teacher. You want to be the best version of that teacher that you can be. So you work on how to better communicate your skills with your students. You work on knowing the most about whatever the source topic is that you can, so that you can better convey that information with your students. And then as you move into whatever your personal endeavors are, so whatever that interest is that you want to take outside of work and outside of your hobby that you want to dive in to learn a little bit more about, find sources to read about. Maybe there's some blogs you can read, there's some podcasts that you can listen to, all of those things just to further that information for you. And then whatever your hobby is, let's say your hobby is playing video games. Great. So you want to learn about that video game that you're playing at that given time. You dive into that. I keep saying dive in. Maybe that's the word of the day, I guess. But you're into that game that you're playing at that given moment. You're working on it. You're trying to learn all of the tweaks about the characters, whatever the hobby is. You try to move into that area and learn most about those. And so by picking those 3 areas, you pick those 3 different topics of interest, and there's tons of different resources that you have. And just to name a few, you have books. Obviously, books are hugely important as far as learning and growing and gaining that information, because you get to pick up where somebody else left off at. You don't have to go through the necessary failures that person went through in order to write that book and then share that information with you. You get to pick up the book. You can read all of the failures. You can read all the successes that were thereafter, and then learn on path with that. YouTube is not just for watching funny cat videos. There's tons of information that you can learn from YouTube freely. It's all there. Wonderful stuff on there. You have podcasts. Podcasts are all over these days. You're listening to a podcast now. Hopefully you're learning from this, but tons of different things as far as areas or opportunities to gain that information to learn in. Hopefully that answered the areas.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was thinking more when I asked the question, let's say you can go to a book to learn, you can go to YouTube to learn, you can go to other people to learn. But I like the distinction and the idea of, like you said, 3 different types or 3 different areas of learning. So you're not just sticking to one thing, but you're able to grow those 3 areas, and then you can kind of track or keep a better pay better attention to those three different areas because you have the specifics of I'm doing something to learn about this. I'm doing something to learn, it's just a different take than I was expecting, but very beneficial. And, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe we need to take it back a step and kind of discuss the difference between a fixed mindset versus this kind of growth mindset. So, it may seem silly, but it's kind of hard to imagine even what like a fixed mindset would look like. So do you have any ideas or concept of, we're trying to live in this growth mindset where we're continually trying to learn, continually trying to better ourselves. But what does the opposite of that look like? That fixed mindset. So maybe people can identify some areas or even recognize what it looks like to have that fixed mindset versus that growth mindset. Do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I would say recognizing, and you could do this in yourself or in other people, but I think the key word here that to find this is stubbornness. If you are stubborn about a certain topic or certain area, then probably that relates to a fixed mindset. If somebody else is stubborn to that area, then again, they have a fixed mindset. And I think that, having another way to talk about this is I'm going to butcher this quote, but it's essentially is sometimes you think you know so much about a topic, but I'm gonna stop there because I'm gonna butcher that. But we'll have to edit this out. I'm all sorts of messing this up.
Well, I was just gonna say, what's the main idea? Maybe not the quote, but I think what you're trying to say is there's people who know things, who are smart enough to know a lot of things. People who are smart enough to know that what they don't know. There's people who are smart enough to not know what. You'll have to edit this though.
You're so easy.
You know what you know. People, you know what you don't know. Don't know what you don't know. Know what you don't.
Okay,
I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's good. All right. So I think another side of this is it can be summed up in three different areas, right? So you know what you know what you don't know, but that third area, the things that you don't know, that is where that fixed mindset also comes into effect. Because if you know what you know, which everybody pretty well knows what they know, pretty well everybody knows what they don't know, but not everybody is even aware of the concept that you don't know what you don't know. Right? Of course, there's things outside. Like if you picture a bubble of things that you know, you picture another bubble of things that you know that you don't know. There's a whole outside of the paper where the rest of the paper is, where it's not inside of those bubbles of things that you don't know that you don't know. And in dealing with that and trying to learn those things that you don't know, if you don't accept those, that's where I come back to stubbornness. If you don't accept that there are things that you don't know, then that's where the stubbornness can come in. That's where that fixed mindset will, in my eyes, present itself.
And it sounds like, as we're talking about it, this growth mindset does require a certain degree of, like you said, acceptance or maybe even humility in the fact that, we all want to feel smart. We all want to believe that we know things and we have knowledge. But to some degree, in order to continue to learn and continue to gain knowledge, you have to accept the fact that there are things that you don't know. You don't know everything, maybe even about a certain topic. And like you're saying now, there are even things that you don't know beyond that. And so I think sometimes the reason that stubbornness comes into play is because we want to feel like, oh yes, I am knowledgeable about X, Y, or Z thing. I know everything there is to know. When really, that I don't think that can be true. There's probably always something you can learn, always something that you can find out. And so maybe that kind of ties into what you're saying is that that stubbornness comes from a point of wanting to feel like we are intelligent when really, there's so much more that we can learn if we accept the fact that we don't know everything. And I think that maybe even is a benchmark of a growth mindset or a not requirement, but it's a telltale sign of someone who is actually very intelligent is the fact that they know things, but they know that there are things they don't know, and they understand that there's things that they don't even know that they don't know yet. And so there's many different levels to that. But like we said,
And I think that part of that is those people are humble enough to accept that there's things that they don't know that they don't know. And on top of that, they're humble enough to learn those things that they don't know that they don't know by then making them either things that they know that they don't know or making them things that they then know. But I think that humbleness, that being able to bring yourself down, to drop the ego, to admit to yourself or to the people that you're talking with or learning from, that yeah, you know what, that's actually not something I've ever thought about before, and that is where the let's say key identifier of somebody in a growth mindset versus somebody who is in a fixed mindset.
Yeah, and part of that too is having to accept that sometimes you're wrong and sometimes you don't have all the answers. And I think that for a lot of people, those two things in specific, and just that kind of idea in general is kind of scary, and can be challenging at times. And so, when you're pursuing this continual learning, this growth mindset, sometimes you're going to have to say, hey, I was wrong about this because I didn't know this. But use that as kind of motivation in my opinion, because I was wrong because I didn't know this, and so let me go find out what this thing is so that I won't be wrong again. Or I think that I know everything, but really I've just scratched or just come in contact with 10%. Well, there's 90% you're going to have to learn, which can be a little challenging, can be kind of terrifying. And so, do you have any tips maybe to overcome that fear or kind of face those challenges when you realize that maybe there's more that you hadn't been aware of before, or you're stepping into a new topic, a new idea that is very vast and very expansive, and I'm sure that challenge, or that facing that huge obstacle could be a deterrent to starting in the first place, because maybe you want to learn more about this thing, but it's so in depth, and so instead of taking on that challenge, someone might just quit. So like I said, is there any tips or strategies for kind of dealing with that fear and challenge maybe?
Yeah, I think one of the again, I'll use the word key identifiers of somebody who's on a growth mindset is the willingness to do things despite the fear of failure. Because they know that if they go and try something, number one, there's a very high likelihood that they're going to fail. But they have to go and do it anyways. And through doing, and sometimes through failure, that is where the learning will happen. So it's a pivotal mindset shift where you have to go from thinking that you know everything to allowing yourself to do things and to fail at doing them so that you can learn better from them. And I think that a key tip that I can give you is, as you can think back, early days in school, it's not with who you are right now. You didn't go to kindergarten as a full-grown adult. You went to kindergarten as a kid, and you had a kid mindset. I think that a way to navigate this growth mindset is to come at things with a childlike mindset, a childlike curiosity as you're going through things. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't think that you're asking stupid questions, because odds are most people, half the people that you're there learning with, or if it's just you by yourself, half the people that came before you that are doing the thing that you're doing, because people unfortunately probably did the thing that you're doing before you did. It's not just you. Most people aren't trailblazers in that regard. So accept that other people came before you. They asked questions, or they should have asked questions. And if you are bold enough to raise your hand and ask that question, then you learn the answer. You don't have to ask that question anymore. You learned what you're supposed to do in those situations. And not only did you learn, if you're in a classroom type setting, then the people around you learned. And as long as they were listening, they don't have to ask that question again, because they learned the answer because you were bold enough to raise your hand. So I think the key tip is to come at new activities, new opportunities for growth with a childlike mindset, in the sense that you are curious as you are going through. And I think the other part of that, as far as the childlike mindset goes, is you break down your preconceived notions of whatever it is that you're doing, so far that you can allow yourself to do it the way that whoever is sharing with you, whoever you're learning from, reading or watching or whatever, can actually help you. Because otherwise you go into these things with preconceived notions as an adult, with an adult type mindset. And those are your fixed mindsets. Those are the things that are holding you back from doing whatever. So childlike mindset, curious, but also drop the adult type of mentality and come at things like a kid, and accept that you don't know lots of things, and accept that you are willing to fail, to learn, to grow, to do whatever those things are.
Yeah, I like a specific word you used there, which is curiosity, because I feel like with that word comes a lot of different connotation. Number one, being curious and genuinely interested in things and genuinely interested in learning more and finding out about a certain thing. But also it does come with the idea of, those questions. You're curious about something, so you're going to ask questions, or, you are, or as you put it, childlike enough to realize that it's okay to ask a question if you don't understand something. That's the only way you're going to find out more. And so I think that word curiosity is very, very poignant in this situation. And so, tying this curiosity to, uh, trying to find out or learn more about different subjects. I think another way to look at that is calling it intellectual curiosity. So you're not just let me go poke the bear over there because I'm curious what happens, but you're curious about these intellectual topics. You're curious about these things that are gonna and the more mindset, the more things that are in your brain necessarily, and the knowledge that you can gain. And again, I think that word is very important and very useful in this situation, but then kind of directly and specifically associating that with your with intellectual kind of pursuits.
Well, I can, as you were speaking this, another idea came to mind too, which is to have an exploratory approach as well. And with this, let's say you have a rough idea of whatever it is that you want to do, and you take that up with curiosity of a child. You have your opportunity to learn and grow in that way, but you use the exploratory mindset as well to dive deeper into, there's my dive deeper part. You move further into that information because you're exploring that concept. Because what'll happen is likely you'll get into it, and one idea, one mindset will be there present in the beginning. As you learn, as you grow, that mindset will shift very likely, because that's part of the process of being a continual learner and being in a growth mindset. Your original mindset is going to alter from what it was because you're learning more. And because you learn more, you're going to ask more questions because you're curious about what you're doing. And through that curiosity, if you can have an exploratory mindset on top of that, then when you ask questions, you can explore the depths of meaning of those questions. Where do those questions originate? How do I answer these questions? What information can I go to next in order to satiate that concept and answer that question? And then you continue down that process of being curious, being childlike in your mindset, but then also exploring the realm of possibilities in the questions that you're asking yourself as you are on that continual growth mindset.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I think kind of the last thing I want to talk about for this topic for today is the idea of the importance of new opportunities. And what I mean by that is, in my own personal life, there's been more often than not things and events and experiences that I was uh, there's all these things that I didn't want to do. When I heard about it, I said, "Oh, that doesn't sound fun to me. I don't want to do that." Or I'm not looking forward to X, Y, or Z thing. Or why would I want to do this? I'm more comfortable sitting back here and doing what I'm used to doing. And more often than not, those experiences have proved beneficial and been 10 times better than I thought they would be initially. And so I guess what I mean is the importance of exploring new opportunities and things that maybe you don't want to do, things that don't seem appealing to you, or things that might, like we mentioned earlier, be scary to you. I've experienced worlds of growth and received so much benefit from doing the things I didn't want to do because they helped me to learn about something else, or they helped me to grow a certain skill, or, they helped me to develop a different mindset than I had had before. And so as we're continuing to grow, as we're pursuing a growth mindset and trying to be continual learners, I think it's important to seek out these things that maybe we don't want to do, maybe we're not looking forward to doing, and the things that might be scary, like we said earlier, because that's going to be something that, and more often than not, is going to put you in different shoes, or put you in a different place, or introduce you to something that you wouldn't have otherwise come across, and then wouldn't be something that you now have as an experience, or you now have more knowledge about. And I think that's a huge pivotal part in this journey to improve our growth centered mindset.
Okay, so that's interesting you bring that up. So in my recollection, in my way of thinking about this, if I can shift my mindset to say that I want to be on a growth mindset, if I commit to being on a growth mindset, then what's going to happen is I'm going to be presented with opportunities to develop that. I'm going to be presented with opportunities to step outside of my comfort zone, which is really what you're talking about, is going outside of the things that you're comfortable with doing. And I have talked about and even written about the comfort zone being like your warm bed. Early morning, the alarm goes off. You don't want to get out of bed. You hit the snooze. You go back to the comfort zone of your bed, hit the snooze, go back in the comfort, and you stay in that comfort zone. If you stay in that comfort zone, you stay in your bed all day. You never get out of your bed because that's where you're comfortable. Nothing happens. No growth happens. You stagnate, and perhaps you even regress a little bit. But if you can move past your comfort zone, if you commit to yourself that you're going to move past your comfort zone, you're going to start to see those opportunities have already been there, always there. But because you are committed to being on a growth mindset, because you're committed to stepping outside of your comfort zone, you will start to see them as opportunities. You'll see those opportunities, those doors that are there presented right in front of you that normally you would walk away from, and you would walk past, not even recognizing that it was there. But because you committed to yourself that you're willing to grow, that you're willing to step outside your comfort zone, those doors will be there for you. And if you can humble yourself to allow yourself to fail, if you can humble yourself to step outside of that comfort zone, if you can embrace that growth mindset, to be curious, to come at things with a childlike curiosity, and then explore what's beyond that door, then you're right. More often than not, you're going to learn from that. And it doesn't always mean that those are going to be successes. However, what they can be is opportunities for you to learn key skills that will equate to successes later on. You may have to go through, and very likely will have to go through, some low points. I seen this chart the other day, and I thought this is so exactly right. Like, my mindset for what growth looks like is just a straight linear uphill from point A to point B. But in actuality, what it looks like is up and then down and then up and then down. And, it's a jagged, and then eventually you get up there. But it's through those lows, through going through those failures, that make the highs, those impacts of succeeding so much more important, so much more, like, they feel so much better because of the lows that you went through in order to get there. And if you stayed inside your comfort zone, yeah, sure, you wouldn't have went through those lows. However, you also wouldn't have been able to reach the successes on the other end. And if you're in a low right now, if you're listening to this and something, you're going through a tough time, understand that, if you can come at this with a sense of curiosity, try to peel it back. What am I learning from this? What can be learned from this? What did I do to attribute to what I'm going through right now? And then how can I make sure this doesn't happen again? What are the key skills that I can take from this tough time that I'm going through right now that I can apply to later on when I'm not going through this tough time, that will help me to succeed and grow and be more than I am?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think there's just some good ideas about that growth mindset, and continuing to push ourselves toward endless discovery and self improvement. So I'm glad we sat down and had this discussion. I'm sure there's plenty more to learn as we're talking right now. And there's things that we still have to learn. So I encourage us all, the two of us included, to continue to cultivate that growth mindset and continue to seek out new opportunities to learn and gain knowledge.